Hi, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. This video I'm going to answer a reader's question. It's a great question and it encapsulates a lot of the things that people think about. So I'm going to read it and then I'll answer it. So I have this. It's from Donna. She writes, really interested in your thoughts of a disaster occurring, such as a terrorist launching an EMP nuclear bomb, or the government totally breaking down like it already is happening, or economic breakdown, aka government. I already have some food stored. Unfortunately, I live in a city, Albuquerque, New Mexico. None of my family takes the state of disasters seriously, or me. I'm retired now from the government, no less. I have a couple of guns, and I would really like to purchase a farm in Tennessee. She has some family there, but only with others contributing money for such an endeavor. Do you have any good facts or arguments I could present to my family to turn their minds to my way of awareness of preparing for a disaster? And she says, I'm sorry to burden you with this, but I worry. Well, first off, Donna, thanks for your question. It's no burden. This is what I do. That's why I wrote the books, and this is why I talk to people all the time. And so your question has given me an opportunity not just to answer you, but anyone else who cares to flip on this channel. So I thank you for giving me that opportunity. First off, don't worry. That's my first piece of advice. Could bad things happen? Yes, but worrying's not going to do anything about it. Okay, there's an old saying that worry is the interest we pay on future problems, most of which never happen. Right? My family always said, "Don't borrow trouble." That means you've already got trouble. Don't borrow more. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, "Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof, or the worries thereof, or the problems thereof." Each day we have enough to deal with. Don't project into the future and waste your emotional and mental energy on worrying. Okay, worrying is an energy suck. It just takes it right out of you. Have you ever noticed that sometimes in your life you've probably laid awake at night worrying about something that had to be done, or you should have done, or you meant to do, whatever, and you couldn't go back to sleep? All you could do is worry about it. And the next day you get up and you get at it, and all of a sudden you're not worrying about it, right? The reason that you worry is because you're not doing anything about it. When we lay there in bed, we can't do anything about a problem that needs to be done during the daytime, and that's all that we can do, and our mind needs to be functioning, somehow addressing this problem. And since we can't do anything about it, we worry. Worry is what we do when we're not doing something to address a problem. So, address the problem, plan, okay, but don't worry. And planning is different than worrying. So that would be my first piece of advice. Don't worry. You're in a good position. You're planning. You're thinking. Okay, you understand that there are reasons to prepare. First, I'll start off with what I think the chances are of different things happening. A terrorist attack, yeah, they're going to happen. They're going to continue to happen, small scale. Could a terrorist attack occur? Yes, they could. We know that it doesn't take much. They can put a small nuke on a Scud and pop it off a freighter, and if they did one on the East Coast, West Coast, and Gulf of Mexico, they could take out all three grids that we have here in the country. Do I believe that's going to happen? I think that the chances of that are low. Okay, so there's that. An economic meltdown, I think that the chances of that are low as well. Now, I'm not going to get into economics here, and people. There are a lot of people out there talking about the economic collapse. I think that it's more likely that we're going to see economic ebbs and flows, as we always have. We're certainly not, remember when we were paying over $4 a gallon of gas? Okay, and now we're down. And these things happen. International economies are They're complicated, okay, and far more complicated than I would feel comfortable trying to tell anybody about. So I'm gonna, no, I don't think that there's a great chance of that. The government collapsing? No, the government is not going to collapse. The chance of an EMP or a CME. I'm going to go with the scientists on that, and I'm going to call that 100%. Okay, and it's not me. And this is getting also to how you want to approach those of your family. How do you convince them? How do you overcome their doubting? Well, the reason that I believe what I do is because I have read the reports. The EMP Commission came out in 2001 with a report. We know about the Carrington event, and I won't go through that again. I addressed that a little bit on a previous one that I made. We know the Carrington event and the effects that they had, and we know that if that happened again, it would pretty much take out everything worldwide. Now, the EMP Commission estimated a 90% die-off after an EMP or a CME event in the affected area, which, of course, with a CME would be worldwide. And the U.S. Geological Survey estimated in their 2012 report a 12% chance per decade of a Carrington-class CME striking the Earth. So when I put those two together, a 12% chance per decade and a 100% chance of, if it does happen, of it taking out 90% of the population of the world, I take that as seriously. The other reason then that I kind of come from that end of the spectrum is that I know that if you're prepared for a CME, you're pretty much prepared for everything else. Now, what does it take to be prepared for a CME? Well, if you want to know what it takes to be prepared for a CME, that's why I wrote the book. Okay, and you'll find everything in there: the reversion, the revival, and I'm going to keep showing the books because that's where my lessons are. It shows exactly what it takes to live a good life after something like that. Now, you're not going to reach that immediately, and it's going to take you some time to reach that point, because it's essentially a point of 100% self-sufficiency. Now, people will say, well, you can't get this total self-sufficiency because you can't grow your own, I don't know, you can't make your own cloth, you can't make your own clothes, you can't make, there's a lot of things that okay, well, if you make it through the first year after a CME and after a 90% die-off, believe me, there's going to be plenty of clothes laying around. You're never going to have to make your own until, the technology and manufacturing comes back, which, it will come back. Because we're people, and it's not like we have to reinvent everything. We already know how everything's done. We just have to kind of put it all back together again. That's going to take a long time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that life has to be horrible in the process. And if you look at, now it will be horrible, of course, for those who died. It'll be horrible for those who did not prepare and remain alive under the control, many times, of those who were prepared or somehow survived through that and may not be the nicest folks. So it could be terrible, but you're wanting to prepare is an indication that you don't want to be in that bunch. So anyway, let's get back to kind of how you address the doubters. Realize that your family and often other people that will be the biggest doubters, right? Because you have family dynamics going on. They've known you all of your life. They know all of the things that you said that weren't right. They know all of the mistakes that you made. Okay, they remember all the times you left your clothes laying all over the floor, or that your car dripped oil on your parents' driveway, and those things. It's difficult to overcome. Like, what's the old saying that no king is a king to his butler? Or I don't think that's exactly the term, but or the saying, but it's something like that. It means that when people have seen you in intimate situations, it's difficult for you to be an expert to them, because to them you're just, Joe or Donna or whatever. So I encourage you, use the scientific information. Use that EMP report. Use the U.S. Geological Survey report. Okay, just approach it in a reasonable manner. Understand it yourself, study it yourself so that you're understanding it, so that you can pass it along, and then just present it to them. And then be prepared, because people will accept something, that's put out there in a reasonable way that they won't accept or even laugh at if you're kind of jumping up and down and running around and, we got to do something, the sky is falling. The more reasonable you are, the more people tend to listen to you. And then just let them, don't be disappointed if they don't jump on board right away. They probably won't, but you've sown the seed. And if they do look into it themselves and they see that you're doing something in a responsible way, then there's a greater chance that they will kind of look into it themselves. And also then, I think I've mentioned this in a previous video, present it in a way that preparedness is simple responsibility. Being unprepared is irresponsible. And if you tell that to most people, they'd get very, incensed, very offended if you told them that they were being irresponsible. Well, they probably pay a lot of money every year for car insurance and life insurance and homeowners insurance and health insurance and all that, and they feel that that's being responsible, and it is. But not spending even just a small amount of what you pay for all that other insurance on the ability to provide for yourself and your loved ones, I think that's very irresponsible. And so when you put those two together and stress that preparedness is simple responsibility, it becomes difficult for a rational person to argue that. Everybody should be. Every person should be a prepper to one extent or another. And the term throws a lot of people off, and I understand that. Doomsday prepper, all that. It's simply a matter of being, but if it wouldn't set them off it didn't set them off if they were Boy Scouts, right? And they said be prepared. It doesn't set them off if that they have a spare tire that they take with them in their car. If they were going to drive across the country, would they say, well, I don't need this spare tire, I'll just leave it here at home, it'll save on the weight and it'll save on the trouble? No, that would be stupid. Not being able to kind of sustain your own life, I think is pretty ridiculous. But if you put it in a way of responsibility, then it becomes easier for them to understand and get on board. Going in together with other people with money in it, I'm not big on that. I'm not big on forming groups, family or otherwise, to where other people are putting money in the game, because it's a recipe in my book for problems, for disagreements. And I'm also not a big proponent of forming groups, mags, groups, things like that. And I'll explain that and I'm not putting down the people who do at all. And I understand their reasoning. I have a different take on it, and I'll do a video on that here pretty soon probably. But it's better if you're the one with the vision, if you're the one with the understanding, try to keep as much of it within your control. If you're the one who's smart enough to see the need for this, recognize that you're the one that's smart enough to provide the leadership if it happens. Okay, so I would suggest that you not bring others into the decision-making process, whether it's getting property with them or whatever. Retain the control as much as you can yourself, and I don't mean that at all to sound like I'm, you're a retired person. You're obviously very intelligent, so I'm not meaning like I need to tell you what to do. That's just my opinion. So anyway, that's what I would say. Don't worry. Plan. Prepare. Approach it with a good knowledge base that you can explain to others in a reasonable way, so that they can hear and begin to understand it. And you might be surprised. You might be surprised as you start to express these things. If if you're not just all how many people start wanting to talk to you a little bit about it, and then that'll be great. Until then, keep on preparing. If you've refer to some of my earlier videos about preparing with food and with weapons and things like that. And I think you'll be well on your. I love Tennessee, by the way. You said you wanted to move back to Tennessee. I love Tennessee. A lot of my family was down in Tennessee, especially eastern Tennessee, when they came up from South Carolina and through Georgia and through Tennessee before we came out here to Missouri and Kansas. And we love it down there. So that's lucky. It's a little densely populated. To be honest, I prefer, for locations, if you're looking at like a CME or an EMP, and we know the problems that we'd be dealing with there, the populations east of the Mississippi are more dense than west of the Mississippi, but in all of those states, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Virginia. Well, I'm sure that all states have areas that are sparsely enough populated that you're going to be able to avoid the problems. So anyway, thank you for your question. I hope that answered some of it. If you have any further, put them in the comments, and I'll call it a day on that one. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.